Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2019 SoCal Retro Gaming Expo in Pasadena, California. What we're looking at here is the free play arcade section of the convention, but we'll get back to this a little bit later in the video. First, I wanted to show some of the main convention hall because this was a really large event. Right here is one of the many console gaming sections. There were also several gaming tournaments going on. What we're looking at here is a King of Fighters tournament, and I believe this was the finals for that tournament. This is actually one of my favorite fighting games, and if I was just a little bit better, I may have considered entering the tournament. There were also lots and lots of vendors over in the vendor hall area, and they were selling things like retro games, of course, but also artwork and modern gaming accessories. Just a really good selection of stuff, and you could pretty much find anything you were looking for. Now this I wanted to show. If you notice this long line that's kind of wrapping around there, that actually wrapped all the way around the convention hall, and it was for the loot boxes that they were selling, and I am really shocked to see that how long that line was. I think that may have been the longest line. You can see people there just waiting against the wall. This was during the first day of the convention, and when we came back the second day, the line was almost just as long. But as we walk around through here, we can see this is another console gaming area they had set up, and this is a 1980s console gaming section, and I loved this. They had it set up just like a living room in the 1980s with the old console TV, the old couch and coffee table, little artifacts on the end tables there. I love seeing this kind of stuff at gaming conventions. They set up something similar to this at the Phoenix Game On Expo, but this convention actually had two sections like this set up, so we'll get a look at that other one in a minute. But man, this is just right out of my childhood. We can take a quick look at that long line again for the loot boxes. They even had this accurate down to an old 1980s newspaper, which this was supposed to be on the end table there. We noticed it was on the ground, so we went ahead and picked it back up. But we can get a closer look at the date and stuff. And this is from June 29th, 1986. See what they were hiring for back then. It's just a really neat artifact to see, and it adds to the vibe of the whole thing. And here's the other section I was talking about. They actually have this set up like a 1990s living room, so you can see they have an N64 there set up with Mario Kart 64. The couch is a little bit newer, the TV's a little bit newer. Like I said, I absolutely love seeing stuff like this at conventions. And here's the end of that line for the loot boxes. It's just crazy. I've never really been into the loot box thing, but it looks like I am very much in the minority. There's the booth right there advertising them. Something else I had a good laugh at was the State Farm booth that was set up. If companies like State Farm are setting up booths at conventions like this, I think we can just all really say that retro gaming has completely entered the mainstream. Now this was awesome to find at the convention. This is a Pokemon Snap station, and they had these at Blockbuster Videos originally. And I haven't seen one of these in ages, at least in person. I see them pop up on Craigslist from time to time, but they're usually a fortune. And you can see this was obviously near a window at the Blockbuster Video because that one side is all faded. And believe it or not, they actually had two of these there. There was another one right there you can see on the other side. And of course you got to have your anime at these conventions too. And lots of retro games. There was a lot of great vendors at this convention, including this ocarina player. This was really cool. Let's take a moment and listen to him perform. let's head back into the free play arcade section. And usually at these type of conventions, they always have a fantastic selection of arcade games, and this one was no exception. There was just a ton of games here and a lot that I haven't seen in ages. Mark and I used to play a little bit of basketball when we were younger, so of course when we saw this game we had to have a shootout competition to see who could get the highest score. These were actually one of my favorite things to play in arcades when I was a kid, to win tickets. The basketballs sure do feel a lot smaller in my hands than they did back then though. Looks like Mark scored 27 points, so now it's my turn. I took a rapid fire approach since these little balls were really easy for me to palm, phrasing, but I can actually palm a full-size regulation basketball too, so it's not really that big of a deal. But as you can see, I am not nearly as accurate as Mark was.
Hey, you tied the little girl. She did not beat you.
Yeah, so there was like a little 6-year-old girl that had played this right before us, and I tied her score. That's a little embarrassing. But let's get a closer look at some more of the arcade games. There's some X-Men cabinets there. You'll also notice too, it was kind of bright in here, but they fixed that the second day to give it the real arcade ambiance. They even had air hockey. I don't usually see that at these conventions. That was fun. But look at how many people there are here playing. This is definitely one of the major draws to these type of conventions, and I wish that arcade operators would see this and see how many people are still into these old school arcade games and maybe start bringing some of them back into their arcades instead of so many of the ticket games. There's just some real gems here, like Outrun. They had an APB cabinet. There's Bad Dudes. A lot of people don't like that game, but I'm very fond of it. And they kind of had them sectioned off too. Like this was like the classic section, so there's a lot of old games like Popeye and Mario Brothers and things like that. Donkey Kong. I love those Nintendo cabinets. And they even had a Dragon's Lair machine. This is a smaller one though than I'm used to seeing, but this is a Laserdisc based game if you're not familiar with it. It's debatable whether or not it's really any good of a game since it is pretty difficult, but it's still pretty cool to see here. And then 2 Simpsons arcade games side by side. I hardly ever see these anymore. And one of them still had the original artwork even on the sides. Now this is one of my favorite pinball machines, Slugfest. I used to play this at a bowling alley when I was a kid, and what was really cool about this machine is you could win baseball cards, and I used to collect baseball cards when I was a kid. This one wasn't dispensing any, but that makes sense. But this is a fantastic little pinball game. Basically, the ball is pitched to you, and then you try and hit it and get it into those different light up areas to advance the runners around the base. And then also occasionally that home run ramp will pop up, and you can try and get a home run to get a really high score. It also cracks me up to see the Subway and Oscar Mayer advertising on there. I didn't remember that from when I was a kid. And of course, Mark shot a home run right in. That was cool to catch that on camera. God, this machine's so much fun. I'd love to have one of these in my garage arcade. Now this is the second day, and you can see they've dimmed the lights in here a little bit, so it feels more like an old school, you know, dim arcade. It doesn't make for great filming, but it definitely adds to the ambiance. They had all the driving games there along that wall, and there were some great ones of those too. I really do love driving games. There was even a Stun Runner cabinet all the way in the corner. So many arcade games here that I would love to own. They even have a Pac-Mania cabinet. I don't think I've ever actually seen one of those. I usually have just played those on MAME. There was also a great selection of light gun games, which I'm a huge fan of, and this is one of my favorites, Crisis Zone. The machine gun just feels great the way it rattles in your hand. This is another one that you don't see very often anymore, but I used to pump just tons and tons of quarters into this at the Pocket Change arcade that I grew up going to at the mall. They even had a Super Contra cabinet, and this is another one that I've never actually seen in person. I've only played it through MAME. It's even more difficult than the original Contra or Super C games on the NES, but it is still fun to play. I really do love light gun games, and here's something I never would have done as a kid, which is dual wield the Uzis, because I never would have spent my precious quarters to do that, but everything in this arcade is free play, so why not?
How badass does that feel?
Feels right.
This really was a fantastic convention, and it seems to get better every year. But don't worry, it wasn't all play and no work. We actually did film some other stuff for the Retail Archaeology channel, so you'll be seeing those videos in the very near future. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed my look at the SoCal Retro Gaming Expo in Pasadena, California, and if you're anywhere in this area for the 2020 convention, I would highly recommend going. As always, everyone, thanks for watching. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out my look at the 2019 SoCal Retro Gaming Expo in Pasadena, California. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and also make sure to follow at the social media links down there because that's the best way to keep up with what's going on with both of my channels.